I'm 88 years old. Yesterday, while my grandson cleaned my attic, I opened a cedar box I swore I'd never touch again. Inside was a red dress I wore once, photographs of a man's hands on piano keys, letters soaked in confession, and the truth that for 67 years, I've been living someone else's life, not mine. The question is, can I find her again before I die? Don't miss a single beat of the story. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like, share this with a friend, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your double dose of my 10 p.m. stories awaits you every single day at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. My grandson thinks he's helping an old woman pack up her life. He has no idea that 15 feet away from him, I'm holding evidence of a crime I committed 67 years ago. Not murder. Worse, I buried myself alive and let everyone believe the corpse was me. That cedar box contains the only proof that Caleen Shaw ever existed before I traded her for safety, respect, and a marriage built on lies. Tonight you'll know what I did. The stairs to the attic groaned under my weight like they were warning me to turn back. My grandson Tyler offered to go up alone, but something pulled me forward. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was fate. My knees ached with every step, my arthritic fingers gripping the railing until my knuckles turned white. The attic smelled like time itself, dust and old wood and something sweeter. Underneath, like perfume that had faded but never quite died. Tyler pushed open the door, and golden afternoon light streamed through the small octagonal window, illuminating decades of accumulated life. Boxes everywhere. Christmas decorations. My late husband Gerald's golf clubs. Our children's baby clothes are sealed in plastic bins. I'm a small woman now, shrunken by age, my once dark hair completely white and thin, always tied back in a neat bun. My hands shake slightly when I'm tired, and my green eyes, the one feature that hasn't faded, still hold a sharpness that surprises people. I wear simple cardigans and slacks, practical shoes. The kind of clothes that whisper grandmother and nothing more. Grandma Caleen, you okay? Tyler asked. He's 23, studying engineering at Berkeley, with his mother's kind face and his grandfather's practical nature. He doesn't know that I used to be different. None of them do. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, my voice still strong despite everything else that's weakened. Let's see what treasures we can find. Tyler moved toward the newer boxes near the door, but I found myself drawn to the far corner, where shadows gathered thick. There, beneath a moth-eaten blanket and an old lamp, sat a wooden box I hadn't seen in 60 years. My heart stopped, then started again with a painful lurch that had nothing to do with my age. It was a simple cedar box, about the size of a small suitcase, with brass hinges that had turned green with age. I'd hidden it there myself in 1965, the year Gerald got his promotion, and we moved from our tiny apartment in San Francisco to this house in the suburbs. The year I decided to become someone else. What's that, Grandma? Tyler called from across the attic. Nothing, I said too quickly. Just old papers. My hands trembled as I brushed the dust from the lid. The wood was still smooth, still beautiful. Gerald had given me this box when we first got married in 1957. For your treasures, he'd said, smiling that earnest smile that made me feel like the worst person in the world that I'd used it to hide the truth. Tyler was absorbed in a box of old photographs, laughing at pictures of his mother as a toddler. I took my chance. With effort, I pulled the cedar box toward me, my back protesting, my breathing shallow. The brass latch clicked open with a sound that echoed like a gunshot in my mind. The smell hit me first. Red door perfume, the expensive kind I'd worn only once. And beneath it, paper and ink and something else, the scent of youth, of possibility, of the woman I'd buried alive. Inside, the contents were exactly as I'd left them. Letters tied with a blue ribbon. Photographs face down, as if hiding from judgment. A tube of red lipstick, dried and cracked. A matchbook from a jazz club that no longer existed. And beneath it all, carefully folded, a red dress I'd never worn again. My vision blurred. Not from tears. Not yet. From the sudden, violent rush of memory that crashed over me like a wave. Before I was Caleen Morrison, respectable wife and mother, I was Caleen Shaw. 24 years old in 1957, working as a secretary at a law firm in downtown San Francisco. I had dark hair that fell in waves to my shoulders, green eyes that men noticed, and a figure I was proud of. I wore pencil skirts and heels that clicked on marble floors, I smoked cigarettes on my lunch break and dreamed of something more than typing letters and answering phones. That I wasn't beautiful, not like movie stars, but I had something. Presence, maybe, confidence. I walked into rooms like I belonged there, like the world owed me something. Gerald was a junior accountant in the building next door. We met at a company Christmas party where I'd been dragged by my roommate. He was 26, already losing his hair, with thick glasses and a nervous laugh. Nice. Safe. The kind of man who would never hurt anyone. The kind of man I could never truly love. But he looked at me like I was everything. Like I was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. And when he proposed 6 months later, down on one knee in Golden Gate Park with a small diamond ring he'd saved for months to buy, I said yes because that's what girls like me did in 1957. We said yes to nice men with good jobs. We said yes to safety and respectability, and a future that looked exactly like everyone else's. I said yes. And I felt the door to my real life quietly close. What Gerald didn't know, what no one knew, was that 3 weeks before our wedding, I met someone who made me remember who I really was. His name was Marcus. Marcus Webb wasn't safe. He was 29, a jazz pianist who played at a club called the Blue Note in North Beach. Tall and lean, with dark skin, expressive hands that moved like water over piano keys, and a smile that suggested he knew secrets about the universe that the rest of us could only guess at. I met him because of a mistake. I'd gone to the wrong address for a legal deposition. Ended up at the Blue Note at 2 in the afternoon. Found Marcus practicing alone in the empty club. The music stopped me at the door. It wasn't like anything I'd heard on the radio. It was alive, dangerous, heartbreaking, and joyful all at once. You lost? He asked without looking up from the keys. Maybe, I said. He turned then, and his eyes, deep brown, intelligent, amused, saw right through me. Through the secretary uniform, through the engagement ring I was already wearing, through every lie I told myself about being content. You want to sit and listen, or you want to keep standing there trying to decide if you should run? I should have run. Instead, I sat down at a table near the stage, and Marcus played for 20 minutes straight while I forgot about the deposition, forgot about Gerald, forgot about everything except the way the music made me feel like I was flying apart and coming back together as someone new. When he finished, he said, "What's your name?" "Caleen." "You're going to come back tomorrow, Caleen?" I shouldn't. That's not what I asked. I came back the next day. And the day after that. And every day for 3 weeks, during my lunch hour, sitting in that empty club while Marcus practiced and sometimes talked to me between songs about music and life and dreams. Marcus answered on the first knock, like he'd been waiting by the door. He'd changed out of his performance clothes into slacks and a simple white shirt. Behind him, I could see his apartment, small, cluttered with sheet music and books, an upright piano against one wall. "You came?" he said softly. I almost didn't. But you did. Caleen, Caleen. The apartment smelled like coffee and cigarettes and old wood. Marcus poured us both bourbon in small glasses, and we sat on opposite ends of his worn couch, the city noise filtering through the walls, cars, voices, sirens, life happening all around us. "I'm getting married Sunday," I said, because he needed to hear it out loud. "I know to a good man. A man who loves me." "I know that too." "Then why did you ask me here?" Marcus set down his glass and looked at me with such intensity one felt exposed, vulnerable, seen in a way I'd never been seen before. "Because for 3 weeks you've been coming to hear me play, and every day you look a little more trapped. A little more like you're drowning and pretending to breathe. And I realized I couldn't let you marry that good man who loves you without telling you the truth." "What truth?" "That you're going to suffocate in that life. And you know it." I should have been angry. Should have stood up, walked out, never looked back. Instead, tears started streaming down my face, and I couldn't stop them. "You don't know me," I whispered. "That I know you better than you think. I know you hate your job but you're too responsible to quit. I know you read poetry but hide the books when people visit. I know you laugh at things that are funny instead of things that are appropriate. I know you're marrying Gerald because he's safe and your parents approve and everyone expects it. But you lie awake at night wondering if this is all there is." Each word was a knife that cut away my defenses. How did he see so clearly what I'd spent months trying to hide from myself? "What am I supposed to do?" I asked. "Run away? Become what, a jazz pianist's girlfriend?" Live in shabby apartments and struggle to pay rent? Disappoint everyone who loves me? Maybe Marcus said. Or maybe you find another way. But Caleen, if you marry him on Sunday, you won't just be choosing him. You'll be choosing to kill the woman you really are. You'll spend the rest of your life pretending. Getting smaller. Quieter. Until one day you wake up and don't recognize yourself in the mirror. He moved closer, and I didn't pull away. I'm not asking you to run away with me, he said. I'm not asking you to choose me over him. I'm asking you to choose yourself. To at least consider that maybe there's another life you could live. One where you don't have to hide who you are. His hand touched mine, and electricity shot through my body. One dance, he said. Before you decide. That's all I'm asking. Marcus put a record on his turntable. Billie Holiday, her voice like smoke and honey, and held out his hand that I took it. That we danced in his tiny apartment, swaying slowly while the city breathed outside. His hand was warm on my waist, his body close enough that I could feel his heartbeat. Or maybe it was my own heart, pounding with fear and desire and something I couldn't name. You smell like expensive perfume and dreams, Marcus whispered. You smell like coffee and cigarettes and danger. He laughed, a low sound that rumbled in his chest. Danger. Is that what I am to you? Yes. Good. You should be a little dangerous too. The song ended, but we kept swaying, kept holding each other like we were the only two people left in the world. Marcus's hand came up to touch my face, his thumb brushing my cheek, and I closed my eyes. Caleen, he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. I'm in love with you. I wasn't going to tell you. Wasn't going to make this harder. But if you walk out that door and marry him, I need you to know that someone saw who you really are. The words shattered something inside me. I kissed him. Not gently, not carefully, but with all the desperation and longing and confusion I'd been carrying for weeks. He kissed me back, and the world tilted sideways. We made love that night in his small bed. The city lights painting shadows on the walls. That it was reckless and beautiful and terrifying. Afterward, I lay in his arms, staring at the ceiling, knowing I'd just destroyed my entire future. Or maybe I'd just saved my life, that I didn't know which. I woke at dawn, Marcus asleep beside me, his arm draped across my waist. The red dress lay crumpled on the floor like evidence. Like shame. I slipped out of bed carefully, got dressed in the gray morning light. Every movement felt weighted with consequence. My hands shook as I zipped the dress. As I stepped into my shoes, Marcus stirred, opened his eyes. You're leaving? I have to. He sat up, sheet pooling around his waist, his expression unreadable. What are you going to do? I don't know. Caleen. Please don't. Please don't make me explain something I can't explain. I grabbed my purse, headed for the door. Marcus got up, pulled on his pants, caught my hand before I could leave. Whatever you decide, he said, don't hate yourself for it. Promise me that I couldn't promise. Couldn't speak. I kissed him one last time, tasting tears, mine or his. I wasn't sure and walked out into the cold San Francisco morning. I went home, climbed into my own bed, and stared at the ceiling while the sun rose. Gerald called at 9, his voice bright with excitement about our wedding rehearsal that evening. I told him I loved him. Maybe I meant it. Maybe I was just trying to convince myself. That afternoon, I went to a small shop in Chinatown and bought a cedar box. I packed everything from that night into it: the red dress, the matchbook from the Blue Note, the piece of paper with Marcus's address. I wrote a letter I never sent, confessing everything, apologizing for nothing. I sealed it all away. Then I married Gerald, smiled in my white dress, said I do with a steady voice, and began the long process of forgetting. The first years of marriage were the hardest. Gerald was kind, attentive, devoted. He brought me flowers every Friday. He kissed me goodbye every morning. He talked about our future, the house we'd buy, the children we'd have, the life we'd build together. I played my part perfectly. I quit my job when I got pregnant with our first child, Catherine. I learned to cook Gerald's favorite meals. I joined the church ladies' auxiliary. I smiled at neighborhood parties and talked about nothing that mattered. At night, when Gerald made love to me with gentle, predictable movements, I closed my eyes and tried not to remember a shabby apartment in the Mission, a jazz pianist's hands, the feeling of being truly alive. I never went back to the Blue Note. Never tried to contact Marcus. I didn't read the newspaper's music section, terrified I'd see his name. I packed away my poetry books. I stopped wearing red lipstick. I became the woman Gerald needed me to be: quiet, supportive, content. Catherine was born in 1958. Thomas followed in 1960. I loved them desperately, fiercely, with a devotion that sometimes frightened me. They were real, unlike the performance I gave every day. They made the sacrifice feel worth it. When Gerald got his promotion in 1965, we moved to this house in the suburbs. The attic was empty then, full of possibility. I carried the cedar box up those stairs myself, hid it under blankets and behind boxes, where no one would ever find it. "What's in the box?" Gerald asked. "Just old papers from my job. Nothing important." He believed me. He always believed me. I sealed that part of my life away and tried to forget it ever existed. This story gets darker from here. Stay with me, you need to hear what happens next. The decades passed like water through my fingers. Catherine grew up to be practical like her father, married an engineer, and gave me 3 grandchildren. Thomas became a lawyer, moved to New York, visited twice a year with polite distance in his eyes. Gerald retired at 65. We took vacations to places we'd always talked about: Hawaii, Alaska, Europe. We held hands on beaches and smiled for photographs. He told me he'd had a good life. A happy life. I nodded and agreed. A night, alone in the bathroom, I sometimes stared at my reflection and wondered when I'd become so invisible. My dark hair turned gray, then white. My figure softened and then disappeared entirely. My face was lined and sagged. The woman in the mirror looked like someone's grandmother, someone's pleasant neighbor, someone who had never done anything remarkable or dangerous or wrong. I told myself I'd made the right choice. That security and stability mattered more than passion. That loving someone who loved me was enough. That the woman I'd been at 24 was naive and foolish, chasing impossible dreams. I almost convinced myself. Gerald died 3 years ago, suddenly, of a heart attack at 85. One moment he was reading the newspaper at breakfast, complaining about politics. The next moment he was gone. The grief was complicated. I mourned him. I did. He'd been my companion for 60 years. He'd been good to me. He'd never hurt me, never betrayed me, never asked me to be anything but what I appeared to be. But underneath the grief was something else. Something that terrified me. Relief. After the funeral, after Catherine and Thomas went back to their own lives, I sat alone in this house and realized I was free for the first time in 60 years. And I had no idea who I was anymore. For 3 years, I lived alone in this house, going through motions that no longer had meaning. I cooked meals for one. I watched television shows I didn't care about. I attended church and book club, and pretended to have opinions about things that felt irrelevant. Catherine worried about me. "Mom, you seem distant lately. Are you okay?" How could I explain that I'd been distant for 60 years, and she was only just now noticing? Then last month, Catherine suggested I move to assisted living. "You're 88, Mom. This house is too much for you. We found a beautiful place, Sunset Gardens. It has activities and meals and people your age. You won't be lonely." The thought of leaving this house filled me with unexpected panic. Not because I loved it, I didn't really, but because leaving meant someone would have to clean out the attic. Someone would find the box. "I'm not ready," I told Catherine. "Mom, be reasonable. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one's there to help?" "I'll think about it," I said, which was what I always said when I wanted people to leave me alone. But Catherine wouldn't let it go. She sent brochures. She called every day. She finally announced she was sending Tyler to help me sort through things and start downsizing. That's how I ended up in the attic yesterday, climbing those stairs one last time, with my grandson innocently unpacking boxes full of Christmas ornaments and baby clothes, having no idea that 15 feet away, his grandmother was opening a cedar box that contained proof. She wasn't the woman anyone thought she was. I pulled out the photographs first. Hands shaking so badly I almost dropped them. 3 photographs, yellowed at the edges, faces from another lifetime. The first, Marcus at the piano, head tilted back, eyes closed, lost in music. Someone else must have taken it. I never carried a camera. I must have asked him for a copy, must have hidden it away with all the other evidence. He was beautiful. Not conventionally handsome, but beautiful in the way passionate people are alive, present, burning with something internal. The second photograph, Marcus and me together, sitting at a table at the Blue Note. My head was thrown back in laughter, his hand resting on mine, both of us looking at each other instead of the camera. We looked young. We looked happy. We looked like people who understood each other completely. That I didn't remember this photo being taken. I didn't remember that moment. But looking at it now, I could feel the ghost of that laughter, the echo of that joy. The third photograph broke my heart. That it was just me alone, sitting on Marcus's couch in his apartment. I was wearing the red dress, my hair loose around my shoulders, holding a drink and smiling at the camera at him with an expression I'd never worn again in 60 years. I looked free. Did I look like myself? Grandma? You okay over there? Tyler's voice snapped me back to the present. I quickly turned the photographs face down, my heart racing. Fine, cert. Just dusty. But I wasn't fine. Looking at those photographs was like looking at a stranger who happened to have my face. That woman, young, laughing, free, had nothing to do with the elderly woman crouched in an attic, hiding evidence of her former self. Or did she? What happened to her? Where did she go? Did I kill her, or did she just fade away? Beneath the photographs were the letters, tied with a blue ribbon that had faded to gray. 7 letters total, all in my handwriting, addressed to Marcus Webb. I'd never sent them. The first was dated June 1957, 2 weeks after my wedding. I unfolded it carefully, the paper brittle with age. Dear Marcus, I married him. You probably knew I would. I walked down the aisle in a white dress and promised to love, honor, and obey, and the whole time I was thinking about you. About your apartment. About the way you looked at me like you could see my soul. I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if there was a right choice. All I know is that I can't stop thinking about what might have been. I won't send this letter. It wouldn't be fair to you or to Gerald. But I needed to write it. I need to tell someone, even if that someone will never read these words, that I'm not as content as I appear. I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone braver than me. Caleen. I couldn't breathe. The words I'd written 67 years ago felt like they'd been written yesterday. The pain was fresh. Raw. The second letter was dated December 1958, after Catherine was born. Dear Marcus, I had a daughter. She's beautiful and perfect, and I love her more than I thought possible. Gerald is a good father. He paces at night when she cries. He changes diapers. He looks at both of us like we're his entire world. I should be happy. I am happy. But sometimes, at 3 in the morning when I'm nursing Catherine and the house is quiet, I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd been braver. If I'd chosen differently. Do you still play piano? Do you still smoke cigarettes and drink bourbon and talk about dreams? The letters continued, spanning years. Each one a confession I'd never had the courage to speak aloud. 1961. Thomas is walking now. The house is chaotic. Gerald got another promotion. We're thinking about buying a bigger house. My life is full of good things, Marcus. So why do I feel so empty? 1965. We moved today. New house, new neighborhood, new life. I'm packing away this box, these letters, these photographs, this evidence of who I used to be. Maybe if I hide it well enough, I can finally forget. Maybe I can finally be the woman I'm supposed to be. 1972. Catherine is 14. She has my eyes but Gerald's practical nature. She wants to be an accountant. She talks about stability and sensible choices. I see myself in her, and it terrifies me. Did I teach her to be afraid? Did I teach her to choose safety over passion? Is this my legacy? 1982. 25 years. A quarter century of marriage. Gerald surprised me with a party. Everyone said we looked so happy together. No one knows that I lie awake sometimes, remembering a shabby apartment, and a man who really saw me for exactly 3 weeks. 1995. I'm 62 years old. My children are grown. Gerald is talking about retirement. We're supposed to be entering our golden years. But I can't stop thinking, is this all there is? Did I trade my youth for security and comfort? Was it worth it? The last letter was dated 2005, 2 weeks after my 72nd birthday. Dear Marcus, I wonder if you're still alive. I wonder if you remember me. I wonder if those 3 weeks meant anything to you. Or if I was just another girl who almost changed her life. That I'm old now. The woman you knew is gone. At the bottom of the box, carefully folded, was the red dress. I pulled it out slowly, the fabric whispering against itself. 67 years old, and somehow it had survived. That it was smaller than I remembered. Had I really been that tiny? That young? I held it up to the light streaming through the attic window. The red had faded slightly but was still vibrant, still bold. A cocktail dress, fitted at the waist, with a sweetheart neckline and a skirt that would have fallen just below my knees. The kind of dress a woman wore when she wanted to feel beautiful, when she wanted to be noticed. Without thinking, I pressed it against my body, looked down at how it fell against my elderly frame. Grandma, did you find something? Tyler was walking toward me, curious. I quickly folded the dress, shoved it back in the box. Just old clothes. Nothing important. But my voice cracked, and Tyler stopped, studying me with concern. Are you sure you're okay? You look upset. How could I explain that I was grieving for a woman who used to exist? That I was mourning a life I never lived? I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those photographs, those letters, that red dress. I kept thinking about the girl I used to be and the woman I'd become. At 2 in the morning, I got out of bed, turned on my computer, a gift from Thomas, who'd insisted I needed to stay connected, and did something I'd been too afraid to do for 67 years. I searched for Marcus Webb. My hands shook on the keyboard. Part of me hoped I wouldn't find anything, that he'd disappeared into history, leaving no trace. But the internet doesn't let people disappear. The first result was an obituary from 2019. My heart stopped. Marcus Webb, 91, legendary jazz pianist and composer, passed away peacefully at his home in Oakland on March 15, 2019. Known for his innovative style and contributions to West Coast jazz, Webb performed at venues across the country for over 5 decades. He was gone. Had been gone for 5 years. I kept reading, tears streaming down my face. Webb never married, but is survived by numerous students and colleagues who considered him a mentor and friend. He continued performing until age 87, when arthritis finally forced him to retire. The piano was his first love and his last, said longtime friend and bassist Charles Morton. He used to say he was married to the music. Didn't need anything else. I didn't need anything else. Or had he needed something, someone, and lost her, because she was too afraid? There were photographs in the article. Marcus at various ages, 30, 50, 70, 90. In every photo, he was at a piano, his hands on the keys. That same expression of joy and concentration I remembered. He'd lived the life he wanted. He'd chosen music over safety, passion over security. He'd been true to himself. What had I been true to? I did something crazy. Something the old Caleen, the grandmother, the widow, the respectable woman would never have done. I got dressed at 3 in the morning, put on slacks and a nice blouse and my good coat, applied lipstick for the first time in months, grabbed my purse and my car keys. Catherine would have had a heart attack if she knew her 88-year-old mother was driving alone at 3 in the morning. But Catherine wasn't there. No one was there. I was alone, and I was free to do what I wanted. I drove to San Francisco, to the Mission District. It took 90 minutes in the dark, my aging eyes struggling with headlights and highway signs, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. The address from Marcus's piece of paper, the one I'd memorized 67 years ago, didn't exist anymore. The building had been torn down, replaced by a modern apartment complex with a yoga studio on the ground floor. I parked across the street, engine idling, staring at where Marcus's apartment used to be, where I'd danced with him, where I'd kissed him, where I'd briefly been myself. All gone. Erased. Like it had never happened. I drove to North Beach next, searching for the Blue Note. It was gone too. A coffee shop in its place, closed at this hour, dark and empty. Everything was gone. Marcus was gone. The places were gone. The only thing that remained was me, an elderly woman sitting in a car at dawn, crying for a life she'd never lived. But I wasn't ready to go home yet. I had one more place to visit, one more person to confront. The woman I used to be. I drove to Ocean Beach, parked in an empty lot as the sun started to rise. The Pacific stretched before me, endless and gray. waves crashing against the shore with rhythmic violence. I got out of the car, walked across the sand. The wind was sharp, cold, but I didn't care that I stood at the edge of the water and screamed. Not words. Just sound. Raw and ugly and honest. 67 years of silence pouring out of me in one long, primal howl. I got dressed at 3 in the morning, put on slacks and a nice blouse and my good coat, applied lipstick for the first time in months, grabbed my purse and my car keys. Catherine would have had a heart attack if she knew her 88-year-old mother was driving alone at 3 in the morning. But Catherine wasn't there. No one was there. I was alone. And I was free to do what I wanted. I drove to San Francisco, to the Mission District. It took 90 minutes in the dark, my aging eyes struggling with headlights and highway signs, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. The address from Marcus's piece of paper, the one I'd memorized 67 years ago, didn't exist anymore. The building had been torn down, replaced by a modern apartment complex with a yoga studio on the ground floor. I parked across the street, engine idling, staring at where Marcus's apartment used to be, where I'd danced with him, where I'd kissed him, where I'd briefly been myself. All gone. Erased. Like it had never happened. I drove to North Beach next, searching for the Blue Note. It was gone too. A coffee shop in its place, closed at this hour, dark and empty. Everything was gone. Marcus was gone. The places were gone. The only thing that remained was me, an elderly woman sitting in a car at dawn, crying for a life she'd never lived. But I wasn't ready to go home yet. I had one more place to visit, one more person to confront. The woman I used to be. I drove to Ocean Beach, parked in an empty lot as the sun started to rise. The Pacific stretched before me, endless and gray, waves crashing against the shore with rhythmic violence. I got out of the car, walked across the sand. The wind was sharp, cold, but I didn't care. I stood at the edge of the water and screamed. Not words. Just sound. Raw and ugly and honest. 67 years of silence pouring out of me in one long, primal howl. When I stopped, my throat was raw. My cheeks were wet with tears and salt spray. My legs trembled beneath me. But I felt lighter. Like I'd released something toxic I'd been carrying for decades. I sat down in the sand, not caring about my good slacks, and watched the sun rise over the city behind me. The sky turned pink, then gold, then blue. A new day. Maybe my last chance at a new beginning. I pulled out my phone, another gift from Thomas I, barely knew how to use, and called Catherine. She answered on the third ring, her voice panicked. Mom. It's 6 in the morning. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm at Ocean Beach, I said calmly. You're where? Mom, did you drive there? Alone? In the dark? Are you insane? Maybe, I said. Catherine, I need to tell you something. About who I used to be. About choices I made. About the woman you think is your mother. Mom, you're scaring me. Good. I've been scared for 67 years. It's time someone else felt what I feel. There was a long silence. Then Catherine said, quietly, tell me. So I did. I told her everything. About Marcus. About the red dress. About the night before my wedding. About the box in the attic. About the woman I'd buried alive to become the mother she knew. I told her the truth. Catherine drove to the beach. Found me still sitting in the sand, watching the waves, the phone silent in my hand. She sat down beside me without speaking, her face unreadable. My practical daughter, Gerald's daughter. The one who'd never understood why I sometimes stared out windows with such longing. Finally she said, did you love him? Marcus? I don't know. Maybe. For 3 weeks, I loved the way he made me feel. Like I was someone worth seeing. And Dad, I loved your father. Just not the way I loved myself when I was with Marcus. Does that make sense? Catherine picked up a handful of sand, let it run through her fingers. I always thought you were happy. You and Dad. You seemed so content together. Some boxes should stay sealed. Some secrets should stay buried. But sometimes you need to open the past to understand your present. Tomorrow, I'll tell you about the man who collected other people's regrets. About the museum of things that should have been. Until then, sleep well. If this story touched you, stay with me for the next one. Tap subscribe, hit like, share it with someone who would feel it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. My 10 p.m. stories arrives every day at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m., so you're always caught up.